Rusev, Pink Barrett, Sheamus, and the United States Champion Alberto Del Rio, the League of Nations.
Four incredible, great champions. Impressive, Morrow, is an understatement. They could be unstoppable.
One of us had to tell this person, listen, you mother F, we're done with you.
The League of Nations can kiss my English backside.
I guess there's a lot of egos in the group too that just clashed with each other because we weren't happy where we were.
The League of Nations might just be one of the most disappointing factions to have ever existed in the WWE, a unit that on paper should have been a bigger deal with the amount of talent alone. Instead, they ended up achieving next to nothing, and worse, it even derailed the careers of everyone in it. So what exactly happened? How can a faction with so much potential be treated as nothing more than punching bags for Roman Reigns during his babyface push? For us to find out why the group never reached its full potential, let's look back at how the league was formed. At Survivor Series 2015, Roman Reigns won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship by defeating Dean Ambrose to close out the pay-per-view. His reign would be short-lived, however, as during the celebration, Triple H would come out and provoke the big dog, allowing Sheamus to successfully cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase to become the new champion. The very next night on Raw, a disgruntled Roman tried to invoke his rematch clause, only to be turned down by the Authority. And to place a bow on their statement, Rusev appeared out of nowhere and delivered a Machka kick to the big dog, planting the seeds for an eventual alliance with the Celtic Warrior. Following the attack, Rusev would go one-on-one with Roman on the main event of Raw, with the champ backing him at ringside. Unsurprisingly, Sheamus got himself involved several times during the match until he finally got caught by the referee and was ejected from ringside. The match though would end in a disqualification finish as Barrett suddenly appeared out of nowhere this time around, hitting Roman with the bullhammer elbow. They would try and beat down the big dog but failed horribly as Roman somehow managed to fend off all three men by himself, looking strong in the process. The following episode of Raw then kicked off with Sheamus celebrating his title win with the New Day, only for Reigns to crash the party and steal the title. This act forced the Authority to give Roman his title rematch that night, but with one caveat: he has to defeat Sheamus in under 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Unfortunately, it ended in yet another DQ finish as Sheamus's buddies came out for the save, with then United States Champion Alberto Del Rio now being added to the mix. Afterwards, the Celtic Warrior would formally announce the formation of the group, calling themselves the League of Nations. Four men, hailing from different parts of the globe, united against a common enemy. The group would officially wrestle their first match together later that night, going up against the team of Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and the Usos. However, before the match could start, the New Day came out, claiming that they've talked to certain officials, aka the Authority, turning it into a 7-on-4 handicap match. The numbers game would prove to be too much for Roman and friends, as the heels won after a sick-looking brogue kick to Ambrose. And just to add salt to the wound, they would attack a fallen Ambrose post-match, triggering Reigns to try and save his friend, only to eat a brogue kick as well for his efforts. During a segment on SmackDown that same week, the New Day announced a 6-man tag team match, pitting themselves against the Usos and Dean Ambrose, and should the good guys lose, Reigns would have to face all members of the League of Nations alone tonight. And well, they lost, and Roman suddenly found himself in a 4-on-1 handicap situation. What looked like another easy win for the faction ended in disaster as Reigns got the better of them with the countout victory. A brawl would break out afterwards, with the league retreating and looking like chumps to end the show. They would try to get their momentum back by winning a massive 16-man elimination fatal 4-way tag team match, but to no avail as Sheamus got pinned by Roman to get the victory for his team. On the go-home SmackDown before the TLC pay-per-view, Del Rio battled the big dog in singles action with the rest of the members of each crew standing at ringside. To nobody's surprise, it quickly broke down into a wild brawl, which finally led to a proper 8-man tag team match later that night. And just like last time, the new faction would lose clean to Roman and crew as they start to look more and more like the League of Jobbers with each passing week. Thankfully, the league was spared from another week of embarrassment at the TLC pay-per-view as all members would be victorious in each of their matches. First, Rusev beat Ryback by making him submit. Then, Del Rio retained his United States title after after a grueling chairs match against Jack Swagger, and at the main event, Sheamus would manage to retain his title against Reigns in a brutal TLC war thanks to a little assistance from his buddies. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to end the night looking strong as a pissed off Big Dog came back to utterly destroy the league and even got some payback with Triple H. Things would only go from bad to worse for the league as on the very next night after the pay-per-view, Sheamus defended his title against Roman, with Vince adding a stipulation that if the Big Dog doesn't become the champion, he would be which kinda made the outcome even more obvious. And so Reigns, even after all the outside interference from the league and Mr. McMahon, overcame the odds to become the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion, a massive blow to the league's credibility. As consequence for continuing to antagonize the McMahons, Stephanie would put Roman's allies into somewhat unfavorable matches, beginning with the Usos facing the New Day in a 3-on-2 handicap match. And later, Dean Ambrose would go up against Sheamus inside a steel cage. Chaos ensued during the bout, with Roman taking out the rest of the league outside while Ambrose and Sheamus battered each other inside the cage. In the end, the lunatic fringe would come out on top as he managed to escape first. While Sheamus's feud with Roman was still the focal point for the league during this time, they would also be involved in matches of other members, helping them get the victory and beating down the opponents afterwards. It was only during these times, when Roman isn't in the picture, that the league looked somewhat of a competent faction, even beating the Usos in several tag team matches. On the January 4th, 2016 edition of Raw, Sheamus finally got his title rematch, with Vince serving as the special guest referee. And even though the league was noticeably absent throughout the match, it still had plenty of shenanigans, particularly from the referee. Still, Sheamus was unable to get the job done, and Reigns stood tall in the end. A week later, Sheamus and Del Rio would be involved in a 1 versus all match where Roman Reigns had to face pretty much every heel on the roster until Brock Lesnar came out to wreck everybody. Then, on the go-home Raw before the Royal Rumble, the league was out in full force again, interrupting a highlight reel segment between Reigns and Jericho and proclaiming that one of them will go on to win the Rumble. Reigns and Jericho would clap back, insulting Rusev, who got eliminated by the Big Dog to win last year's Rumble. This led to an impromptu match between the two, with Y2J serving as the special guest referee because why not? During the bout, the rest of the crew would try their damnedest to help the Bulgarian Brute, only to be ejected by Jericho in the most hilarious of fashions. And if anybody is still wondering at this point, Rusev lost the match. At the pay-per-view, Del Rio would lose his US title to Kalisto, with surprisingly none of the other members being there to help him. Then at the Rumble match itself, the one where the title was on the line, the league would take the champ out of the equation, temporarily at least, at the behest of Mr. McMahon. They would all end up getting eliminated by the Big Dog anyway, though at the very least, they were able to play a pivotal role in taking the title off Roman. Post-Rumble, Sheamus and Rusev tagged together to face the duo of Roman and Ambrose in yet another losing effort. However, as payback for what they did in the Rumble, Roman and Ambrose would deliver a shield bomb to Rusev in the announce table to end the night. If the last few weeks weren't enough of an indication that the league were being buried, then this moment should seal the deal. They would continue to feud with Roman and Ambrose in retreads of previous matches for the better part of February, all ending in either a loss or a DQ finish. Interestingly, Wrestling Inc. wrote an article back in 2022 highlighting the league's win-loss record against Roman over the course of their feud. In it, states that in the 48 matches they've had, the league only defeated the Big Dog a staggering 5 times, which translates to a putrid 10% winning record. Meanwhile, on the less important side of things, the league also continued their beef with the Lucha Dragons, Neville, and Dolph Ziggler, getting some wins back even though these were largely inconsequential matches. Del Rio would get a chance to recapture his gold against Kalisto in a 2 out of 3 falls match at the Fastlane kickoff show, though he would ultimately be unsuccessful. Also at the pay-per-view, the league would slowly transition into feuding with previous allies in the New Day, who had since become super over with fans and had begun turning face. During a cutting-edge peep show segment with the New Day, the League of Nations came out to interrupt, leading to a back-and-forth game of verbal insults, which the good guys won. Following this confrontation, the New Day would continue to make fun of their new rivals on several backstage skits, resulting in a match being made for the Roadblock pay-per-view, with the New Day defending their belts against Sheamus and Wade Barrett. The league almost had the titles won at some point, but a distraction from Xavier Woods saved the New Day's lengthy title reign. This would only be the beginning though, as the other half of the foursome, who were absent during the match, laid out the challenge to the champions. They would get their title shot the following night on Raw, but were also unable to successfully capture the belts. And being the sore losers that they were, the league would brutally assault the champs post-match to further the feud. After weeks of members from each faction facing each other in singles action, the two finally collided in a 6-man tag team match at WrestleMania 32. It was a largely forgettable match in one of the worst WrestleManias in recent history, but surprisingly enough, the League of Nations would pick up the victory, the biggest one in their group's short existence. Unfortunately, it looked as if the group was forever cursed with never being able to end the pay-per-view match looking strong, as Barrett made the grave mistake of running his mouth, claiming that there were no 3 men that can defeat the League of Nations. And right on cue, Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, and Stone Cold Steve Austin would come out and lay the smackdown on them fools. The segment ended with the New Day trying to celebrate with the legends, only for Woods to eat a stunner from Stone Cold. In an interview years later, Del Rio would shed light about a backstage fight that allegedly happened right before they made their WrestleMania entrance, and while he didn't go into detail as to what caused this, it was no doubt a bad time for everyone involved, as the New Day had also previously mentioned in their podcast having a heated confrontation with the league before the match. On the Raw after Mania, Barrett and Sheamus would again get the opportunity to win the tag team titles, facing the New Day in a title match. However, due to a miscommunication, the New Day were again able to retain the titles. Post-match, the league would kick Barrett out of the group, literally, with Sheamus calling him the weak link as he took him out with a bro kick. Then, in a shocking turn of events, the Wyatt family appeared out of nowhere to utterly dismantle the now disjointed League of Nations. This marks the beginning of the end for the group, as well they would move on to a feud with the recently turned face Wyatt family. It was immediately got cut short when Bray got injured, leaving the league directionless in the coming weeks. Finally, on the April 28th edition of SmackDown, the faction would mercifully be put out of its misery when the 3 men imploded during a random 6-man tag, and all of them walked out of the ring in a fitting countout loss. After which, the trio would blame and push each other backstage like a couple of grade schoolers, as Sheamus declared the partnership to be over. Post-League of Nations, Barrett would leave WWE entirely on May of 2016 after refusing to sign a new contract due to creative frustrations. Del Rio would stick around the company a few months longer until he also left in August that year, exercising the opt-out clause in his contract due to unhappiness with his position in the company. Meanwhile, Rusev bounced around the card in other storylines for the remainder of 2016 until he finally hit his stride as a babyface with the whole Rusev Day gimmick. However, WWE never saw him as a main event player even after getting massively over with the fans, and he would be just one of the many releases during the pandemic budget cuts in 2020. As for Sheamus, well, he definitely got the best ending, as shortly after, he would form one of the best tag teams of the last decade with Cesaro, calling themselves The Bar, and to this day, he's still in WWE, producing banger after banger.
After banger!
So how bad was the League of Nations actually? If I was to rate the faction on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving them a 5 out of 10, which also happens to be the number of matches they won against Roman Reigns. In all seriousness though, this faction is far from the worst one in recent history. And if you discount the number of times they jobbed to Roman, they actually won a decent amount of matches together. But therein lies the problem, because this group was really just made for the sole purpose of making Roman look like a strong babyface. And for 4 men with their caliber, you'd expect way better treatment than that. If WWE really needed a group who'd job out to Roman on a weekly basis, why not just get a group of actual jobbers like the Social Outcasts, for example? Make them the authorities' hired goons. In the end, all members involved came out of the faction looking a lot worse than when they started. And they didn't even help turn Reigns into that super over babyface WWE wanted him to be. So what was really achieved then?
Nothing.
But as bad as the League of Nations was, there's a faction in recent history that's far worse. And to find out their story, check out the next video in your screen. See you there.